what they call the BU Challenge 2025 to Nigeria, which we just concluded in Lagos. So I got an email which says, Anthony, we have searched through all the university, and every hand is pointing towards you to lead the Bournemouth University to Nigeria. Oh my God. Yeah, so we've got a very large number of Nigerians in Bournemouth University as lecturers, but when it happened that I was chosen, I said this is a divine arrangement for me to make my second visit to Port Harcourt. So they took care of my international flight, my accommodation in Lagos. So I was able to fix in my local flight with my remaining funding for my, so that's how I'm able to make it today. So I'm grateful. So remark by the principal investigator, Dr. Anthony, that is my name, on April the 15th, 2025, at the training and capacity building and policy development event. So good morning, distinguished guests, respected colleagues, facilitators, participants, and our gracious host here at the University of Port Harcourt. It is both an honor and privilege to address you today as the principal investigator of this strategic and timely initiative, the Gender Equality Project, GEPP, made possible through the general support of the British Council using its Going Global Partnership Program. So let me begin by expressing sincere appreciation to the University of Port Harcourt again, management and faculty team, the British Council, and our dedicated local organizing committee, whose effort and hospitality have brought us together for this pivotal moment. This workshop represents more than a scheduled training. It is a powerful step towards achieving meaningful, actionable change in the gender equality landscape in Nigeria's higher education sector. We are gathered here not only to share insights, but to co-create pathways for institutional reform that are inclusive, evidence-based, and locally grounded. What excites me most about this project is its commitment to collaborate knowledge production. This is not a top-down initiative. Top-down initiative was the main question they asked me during our event in Lagos. They were concerned about developing a policy and not actually implementing it. So because my presentation on behalf of my research team actually stole the event in Lagos, because everyone were like, we want to see a gender policy being implemented in Nigeria. So so we are here. So this is not a top-down initiative, rather it is a partnership rooted in mutual respect, where students, faculty, administrative and technical staff all play a vital role in sharing future policy directions. At Bournemouth University, we are proud to partner with an institution as influential and forward-looking as the University of Port Harcourt. Our shared goal is not just to conduct research, but ensure that findings lead to concrete institutional transformation through practical tools, responsive training, and sustained engagement. Over the next few days, we will explore capacity building, gender-aware policy design, and intersectional leadership development. I encourage every participant to engage actively, ask questions, share your stories, help shape a vision of gender equality that works for your context. Together, let us seize this opportunity to build something that lasts, a gender-responsive higher education framework that empowers individuals, strengthens institutions, and advances national development. Thank you for your attention and for your shared commitment to this work. I look forward to the conversation, collaboration, and progress we will make together this week. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming. Cheers.
Thank you very much. Another big round of applause. Thank you. If you look at the time now, it's 11:35. And in the next 25 minutes, we're going to take the next lecture. And the next lecture was supposed to be from 10:35 to 10:58, which, if you look at it, is about 25 minutes. So the time now is 11:35. So at the top of the hour, which is noon, we may get about 25 minutes. So may I, at this point in time, invite the first speaker for today, who will talk to us about the power of inclusive policy design. I am talking about Dr. Clara Ifanyobi, Head Department of Agricultural Extension and Development Studies, University of Port Harcourt. Please put your hands together for her.
I will sit to present.
25 minutes is noon.
10 minutes. Okay. My phone. All right, good morning, everyone. Please permit me to sit and make my presentation. I want to leverage existing protocol, all protocols duly observed. But before I start, I want to express my appreciation to the project team for the honor of having me to do this presentation. I say thank you to the project team. Okay, my name is Ifanyobi Chinwoke, the acting head of Department for Agricultural Extension and Development Studies. And coincidentally, I'm concurrently running 2 fellowships that are all centered on gender responsive policy. I'm an award fellow under their Gender Responsive Policy Systems Fellowship, and also a fellow of INGISA Africa. INGISA Africa is all about science communication, using your research output to influence policy and practice. So you can see I'm so excited to talk about inclusive policy, the power of inclusive policy design, gender perspectives, and stakeholder voices in designing our policies. So in the few minutes that I will be talking to you, we will first of all look at what policy is all about. Next slide, please. What policy is all about. Effective stakeholder mapping and policy process. Then strategies for effective stakeholder mapping. What strategies we can adopt to do an effective stakeholder mapping. Then what are the techniques for inclusive consultation and participation, and the tips for inclusivity in policy process. So we start with asking ourselves, what is a policy? Every day we hear policy here and there, policy, policy. What is it all about? And from available evidence, Nigeria, our problem in Nigeria is not the lack of policies. We have policies all around us. Every sector, we have sufficient policies. But what is it all about? So I have a simple definition. It is just a deliberate system of guidelines, could be procedures, it could be principles to guide decisions and actions towards achieving rational outcomes within a specified period. I always like to use what is around, what is known, to go to the unknown. We're in the University of Port Harcourt, and one of the policies that is every single person in the university is very familiar with is academic statement of the university. So it's something like, if you're in administration, it's like a second Bible to you. If you're heading a unit, it's like a second Bible, because every single thing you do, you have to consult. What does the academic policy state? The student comes to you to this. You want to check what has the academic policy say about this. So policy is all about guidelines and procedures to help us, influence us towards a particular goal. It maintains orderliness. Something to help us see that the actions we are doing, even allocation of resources, are all geared towards achieving a particular goal. I'm an agric, and most times you see these policies have a specified period during which they run. Like in agric now, the current policy, Nigerian agricultural policy, is the NATIP, which started in 2022 and will run till 2027. But today we are not just talking about policy. I was happy when the project lead was speaking, telling us it's not a top-down, it's a collaborative. You have the students, you have the teaching staff, you have the non-teaching, you have the technical staff. So it's an inclusive approach to policy development. So today our interest is on inclusive policy, a policy that is inclusive. And what do we mean by an inclusive policy? Inclusive policy refers to a policy-making approach that intentionally involves diverse voices, especially those that are marginalized, underrepresented, or directly affected by the issue at hand. You know, so many times when policies are being developed, it is just done at the top, the policymakers. Those are the grassroots. Most times they are marginalized. And these people are even the beneficiaries of this policy. And at the end of the day, the process does not integrate them. The process does not recognize them. Their needs and interests are not even embedded in the policy. So it will just be like something on paper because it is not inclusive. It is not addressing the needs of these people. So, but for us, the gender team, they're interested in having an inclusive policy. Before we proceed, I would like us to understand gender because it's one of the most common words that are misunderstood. Once we say gender, our mind goes to men and women. Gender goes beyond that. Gender is not about sex. It's not about being a male or being a female. It is a social construct of expected behaviors, expected identities, behaviors and roles assigned to us. It is not something that is static or rigid, like just, it's either you're a male, you're a female, no. Gender is dynamic. Over time, it changes. Take, for instance, while we were growing up, for things like house washing of plates is specifically for us, the girls in the house that washes plates. You don't tell a boy child you have to get involved in washing plates. But today, some of us mothers here, I don't know if you're still following that route, that washing of plates is just for the boy child. No. So you see, gender roles, it evolves over time. Now in my house, there's nothing like it is for the girls. Everybody get involved in the house chores. Sweeping of the house is shared for everybody. Washing of plates is shared for everybody. So gender is not static. It's not something like it is identified by biological traits of being a male or a female. It is most times the role society expects or assign to us. So it goes beyond being a male and female. It is dynamic and can vary across culture and time, over time too. It also influences opportunities and responsibilities and even access to resources and power. That is why we are particular about being gender responsive. I think most times why we assign gender to being male or female, maybe because sex is one of the most key variables we use to identify people's socioeconomic characteristics. Those in econometrics, I think you can agree with that. So we are looking at effective and sustainable policy. What must it include? An effective and sustainable policy Thank you. So, key features of inclusive policy before we go to being effective and sustainable. What are the key features of an inclusive policy? We're interested, as I earlier said before today, about inclusivity, a policy approach, a policy development system that is inclusive. What are the key features? One is participation. I didn't say just consultation, participation. Active involvement, just like we're having today. You know, sometimes in policy development, the People at the grassroots are just consulted, and that ends it. They are not involved in the whole policy of developing the policy. They don't participate. But today we're talking about participation, including all stakeholders, men, women, youth, those with disability, the minority groups. And when we say male, female, we go beyond classifying them as male, female. You agree with me that if you talk about women, there are those who are educated, there are those who are not educated. There are also those who are low-income earners. There are those who are high-income earners. So when we really want to look at inclusivity, we go beyond just identifying people as male and female. So that system must be a participatory system for it to produce an inclusive policy. It should also be a system that recognizes equity and fairness. It is not just recognizing, but also having measures to address those disparities between stakeholders. It also must be a transparent system, transparency. It will also be a responsive system, a system that reflects the real needs. In extension, we talk about recognized and felt needs, not assumed. You assume these people have this need, no, but the real needs and interest of the people. Then accessibility. Is it accessible? The information and the opportunities to engage, are they in inclusive format? You will see that so many times, like in the agricultural sector, we have policies. And if you understand the agricultural sector very well, I'm always talking about agric sector because that is where I belong. You will know that one of the key stakeholders, they are farmers. But when policies are being made, these people at the grassroots are neglected. Not only that they are neglected, most of the agricultural policies we have today, how many farmers can read it and understand? We are talking about accessibility. Having these things in format that those people can understand. So it is very important if you want to have an inclusive policy. So an inclusive policy produces a policy that is effective and sustainable. An effective and sustainable policy must adopt an inclusive approach. It must also adopt a bottom-up approach and must be gender responsive. I will just mention the policy development process in passing because somebody is going to speak to us extensively on it. Every policy have a process for you to develop a policy. You don't just wake up one day and you bring up a policy, no. Take for instance, if you're following this project, you see when they started, you see the sensitization, you see now they are trying to develop our capacity for effective engagement. So there is a process, agenda setting, then the process of designing, drafting the policy, then adoption. You have to get the policy legitimized. It has to go through a process of legitimization, the implementation, and finally you monitor, you evaluate, and make adjustments where necessary. Okay, so now to the main cause of what we want to discuss, effective stakeholder mapping in policy process. Why do we talk about effective stakeholder mapping? Because it helps us to identify who has power, interest, influence, or even potential impact on the policy. You know, policy development process is not just something you can do as an individual and you get the policy done. It goes through a lot of processes. You must be able to identify those who has power to influence, those who have interest, those who the policy will also impact. All of these people are important in the policy development process. And for you to be able to identify these people, you must be intentional and follow a particular process. The project team will agree with me that they did a lot of brainstorming to be able to identify all the key stakeholders that must be involved in drafting this gender policy. That is effective stakeholder mapping. And effective stakeholder mapping, it helps us to understand who policy key players are. It will also help you to understand what are their interests, what influence can they have, and what are the effective engagement method that you can use to engage them. So, strategies for effective stakeholder mapping. You are in a policy development process. What are the strategies you can use to have an effective stakeholder mapping? The first one is that you have to clearly identify your objectives. You must understand your objectives. If you don't clearly define your objectives, you may get yourself at a crossroad in the process of developing or even getting these stakeholders. I had an experience last year. I'm working on a policy innovation project under the award fellowship. We had a stakeholder engagement to plan, and we did our brainstorming, identified the key stakeholders, and started engaging them. But along the line, I discovered that there's a missing link. We are not getting the response we want. The people that we are talking to, they seem not to be the right people, and we have to go back. And we now discover that we didn't define our objectives very well. We are not thinking outside the box. We were so narrow in defining our objective, what we want to achieve. We have to go back to the drawing table, define our objectives, and now we're able to do a proper stakeholder mapping. And that was how we got the real people to engage, the key stakeholders that gave us the real response that we were looking for. So instead of that key informant interview we were using, we discovered that it was experts we needed, that we needed to do an expert consultation. So it is important that you define your objectives very well. If you don't do it, you will miss the link somewhere, and all other stages may be difficult for you to accomplish. After you have identified your objectives, you have to identify now who are the relevant key stakeholders. Once you get your objective defined, it will be easy for you to know who are the relevant key stakeholders. Then you categorize these key stakeholders. Remember that your key stakeholders cut across diverse people. They could come from government bodies, NGOs, civil societies, private sector, academia, and all of that. Then you categorize them. You can categorize them by their function in that policy process. Who are the advocates? Who are the blockers? Who are the gatekeepers? Who are the implementers? And who are the beneficiaries? The essence of categorizing them, it will help you know the means of engagement, effective means of engagement. Remember that the stakeholders, they are not a homogeneous group. They are heterogeneous. So you must have diverse ways to engage them for you to get the best feedback that you need. So once you're able to identify them, categorize them, analyze their interest and influence, you are good to go. The engagement process will now be easy. So if you're able to do this first step very well, at the end of this first step, you will be able to have a clear stakeholders matrix, knowing who to inform, how to keep them informed, and the level of. Next slide. So if you're able to do the stakeholder mapping well, you will know how to engage these stakeholders. You will now be able to produce your stakeholders matrix. You will be able to identify those that have high power, high interest, those you manage closely, those that have high power, low interest, you just keep them satisfied. Those that have low power but they have high interest, you make sure that you keep them informed. And those that have low power, low interest, you monitor them lightly. These stages are very, very important if you want to produce an inclusive policy. So the next stage will now be the engagement. Engaging the stakeholders. Once you're able to identify them, categorize them according to their influence and power, then you plan your engagement strategies. You plan your engagement strategies. The way that I will engage a farmer It's not the way I will engage an agricultural practitioner in the Ministry of Agric. It's not the way I will engage undergraduate students in Agric. It's not the way I will engage postgraduate students in Agric. Every stakeholder have an effective means of engagement. You must take that into consideration in the policy process if you want to have an inclusive policy. So after planning your engagement strategies, you begin early to engage them and you continuously. That is where sometimes we get it wrong. You have gone halfway into developing your policy, and that is when you now remember people at the grassroots. If you remember at the beginning of this project, they have the whole university community for sensitization, engaging us from the very beginning. I don't think there is any quarter in this university that is not aware that this project is going on. So right from the very start, people are already aware. Those who have something to offer or something they have concern, they have interest, they're already reaching out to them. So you must begin from the early stage, the planning stage. If you remember the policy process I just showed some slides away, the agenda setting, right from that first stage, you begin to engage them. So engage early and also make sure that you review and update regularly. Because as the process is going on, there is need for adjustment, review and adjustment if you want to get it right. Then we go over to finally to techniques for consultation. Now you have been able to map your stakeholders. You have known who are your stakeholders that you want to engage to produce an inclusive policy. You have been able to plan, you have been able to identify them, you have been able to categorize them and know their level of power, their level of influence, their level of interest. And you now know those to manage closely, those to keep satisfied, those to keep informed. The next thing is, what kind of technique, method are you going to use in consulting and getting them participate? There's varieties of method. If you understand your stakeholder, then you will know the method to use to engage them. It could be public hearing and open forums, where you maybe have a town hall meeting for all the stakeholders. You allow them make their suggestion freely. At every stage of policy development, there's a proper method to use. There is no one cap fit it all. It is the type of engagement that means the type, the method you will use. And also the socio-economic characteristics of your stakeholder that determines the kind of technique you will use to engage them. If I want to engage farmers now, I will not do a PowerPoint that have all these words. No, it's pictures. I just go with pictures. And I do most of my, the little thing that will be there will be in broken English. And I will not be speaking this kind of English when I'm talking with them. So you must understand your stakeholder. You must understand also even the resources available to you. All of this shape the kind of, the method you will have to use in consultation. When I did my stakeholder consultation in my policy innovation project, I didn't have much resources. And I am developing a framework that will be used by the Ministry of Agric. It is something that cut across the whole nation. And the resources was very small. We thought of how to reach out to the whole agricultural experts in the nation. We don't have the resources. What did we do? We now moved over to digital means. And within 3 days, we were able to cover the whole nation using digital means. So you have to understand all these factors surrounding the policy process so that you'll be able to plan your method of engagement very well. So it could be an open hearing, open forum, just like we saw the project teams. Excuse me. So just like we saw the project team did some months ago, you could also leverage surveys and questionnaires if your stakeholder, they are literate enough to understand surveys and questionnaire. It cannot be for everyone. It can be paper-based, it can be digital. A lot of tools are available for us today. It is no longer in those days that you carry your questionnaire and go to every cranny. Today you can use a lot of tools are available for us to use to collect our responses digitally. It can also be a focus group discussion where you gather them in groups of between 8 and 10 persons and dissect the discussion, extract your information, your feedback from those people. It could also be an online platform and digital engagement. It can also be community-based consultations, depending on the kind of policy that you are developing. It could be a key informant interview. So, as I said earlier, study your stakeholder. If you understand them, you will be able to know the method to use to engage them. Finally, tips to ensure inclusion. What are the tips you have to use to ensure inclusion? We are talking of inclusive policy. First, provide translation and interpretation services where needed. We started by defining gender. And gender cut across every set of person, those with disabilities. If you want to develop an inclusive policy, you must find a way to ensure that all these people are carried along in the policy process. You see some of this policy, maybe validation meeting and all of that. You see people trying to interpret to ensure that the interests of those people are also integrated in the policy. Use venues that are accessible, venues that people with special needs can also access. Then logistics, provide transport and child care where necessary. When you want women of childbearing age to be part of it, you must provide logistics like child care for them to be part of it. You reach out to marginalized group and make sure that they are involved. Then use trusted intermediaries and facilitators. So, for us to have an inclusive policy, stakeholder mapping, effective participation is very, very key. Thank you very much.
Please, another big round of applause for our speaker, Dr. Clara Ifeanyi, the Department of Agricultural Extension and Development Studies. Thank you. She actually kept the time, and it is our prayer too that others will follow suit. Thank you. Thank you very much. All right, thank you very much. Yes, thank you very much. Thank you very much. While the lecture was ongoing, one of our speakers just arrived, and he is one of our senior professors in the university here, Director, Center for Politics, University of Port Harcourt. I'm talking about Professor F. Allen. You're welcome, sir. Please, you come to the table. You have a space. That's for Adeshokwe, so you go to the next one. Thank you very much. A big round of applause for Professor Fidelis Allen. Thank you. He's a Director, Center for Politics. If you want to play politics, then you go study there. Thank you. Then because our intention was that we take all the questions at the end of the day, but our speaker who just spoke is having another meeting right now at the law faculty. The 50th anniversary celebration of the university. Is a member of the committee. So we'd like to find out if you have 1 or 2 questions so that she can attend to that before she leaves. At least 1, 2 questions. The opportunity is there, or contribution, please. Do you have any concern from what she has taught so far? From our lecture? Yes, thank you very much. Thank you. Your name and the question.
Good day, all. My name is Barrister Chibuzo. I'm from the Department of Social Work, a postgraduate student. I want to just say I so much appreciate your paper, but my worry is that oftentimes you find out that for one to be able to go about all this and achieve all the tips and procedures that are there means that such program you must be well funded. Possibility of getting this, because oftentimes even when it is so obvious that it's a program that you want to just do for the benefit of the community, you find out it is always fun, it attracts fun. So wherein it is a project that does not have such funding, how will one be able to go about this in order to achieve this basic aim? Thank you.
Thank you. Any other one? So that you can take the two. All right, thank you. Let me balance the equation. There's a man here.
Thank you. Good day, everyone. Madam Presenter, thank you very much. Mine is just a simple question. You started by defining gender as not being specifically talking about male or female. However, you said that gender is talking about socially constructed roles. Now, what I found missing, which I want you to speak to, is if society is constructing roles, behaviors, characteristics, I thought these are with relation to whether one is male or female. So because we are here to talk about gender equality policies for the university, where we are saying that the roles one will perform in the society, beginning from the university, this citadel of learning, should not be defined by one's sexual characteristics. So when you define gender and not being limited to that, so I want to understand, where do we draw the line? Should it not be that gender is socially constructed roles that are linked to one's biological traits as either male or female? Thank you, ma'am.
All right, finally, the last one before you handle.
Thank you. Doc, thank you. So you talked about driving these gender issues at the grassroots level. Those of us who come from the grassroots, like communities, rural communities, we have our attitudes towards anything that comes from outside the community. Now you have a project you want to do in the community. First of all, you have to reach community leaders. And they have this mentality that something that comes from outside must be beneficial to them. So they ask, what are you bringing to us? They don't understand that maybe what the project you are doing is to benefit people in the community. It might not be finance. So they want to know what you are bringing to them. And in most cases, they want you to give them that thing before they can allow you to even assess those people you want to reach out to. So how do we overcome this challenge of what did you bring for us? What has government asked you, given to you to give to us, before we can even allow you to talk to our women or our children or our youth? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much. Let me start from the last question. The communities, you know that for somebody ordinarily, for someone to be interested in any project, most times you ask yourself, what do I stand to benefit? What do I stand to benefit? Before you get commitment from people in a project. So you cannot just enter a community. You're planning a project and you know that it will involve local communities. And you don't think of how will these local communities benefit. Even when we're going beyond just policy scenario, even when we do our research, for some of us that are in social sciences, that we go to these local communities, administer questionnaire for them to answer, do you ever embed them in your research? Maybe the research outcome, you want to mainstream it by training. Do you consider bringing them in as part or participants in those training? So it is very important too that when you are planning a project that will involve local communities, you also think of how they will also benefit. Not just bringing them in, consulting them, getting their knowledge, getting maybe their everything about them, but how will they benefit? So if you have all these things inculcated in your project, when you now begin to engage them at the beginning of it, makes it easy. When you go for community legitimization, that is the very first, going to inform them of your project, and getting their consent. Because if they don't give you approval, agric extension, that is what we do. If they don't give you approval to come into their community, you have no right to come in there. Even before you administer questionnaire to the community people, you must get the approval of the village chief. So if you have these benefits inculcated, and at that visitation, you explain to them tell them what they stand to benefit too from the project, then you will see that their interest, their commitment, you will get it from them. But if they don't stand to benefit anything, I doubt if they will be committed to that project. There must be something that those at the grassroots will benefit, to help them, to help get that commitment and dedication towards that. And once they stand to benefit, you will see them, they will own that project. They will even be, you don't need securities to guide the project. They will be guiding it because they know that there are things they stand to benefit. So it is important, you as project lead, you as research lead, to think of also what the community will benefit, not just using them as respondents and all of that. Then coming to assigning roles or defining gender, these social roles according to the sex, being male or female. Yes, I said that, and I remember I also said that there are other variables that define these social roles. But why sex seems to be very conspicuous is because it is one of the key socioeconomic variables that we use to identify people. If you were doing a research now, when you have your section for socioeconomic variables, you don't have only sex. That's not the only thing that you use to define gender. You have things like income. You have things like age. If I'm engaging community people, I don't just define them by male, female. I talk of the young ones, the youths. I talk of the elderly ones because they don't use, you cannot engage them with same method. It differs. So it goes beyond sex. That is what I want you to understand. There are other factors. It's not just sex. There are other gender identities. If you fix your mind only on sex, you will not be getting a very inclusive process because there are other things. Even in the sex you are talking about, you don't just define them as male and female. Within male, within female, there are also some other variables that differentiate them. Like, for instance, if you are talking about farmers, we have female smallholder farmers. We have female commercial farmers. So are you understanding that? You see that there are other gender identities beyond just classifying them as male and female. We are talking about inclusive policy. If we really want to get it right, we must go beyond just having these people as male and female. You must identify other gender identities and use it to also streamline their roles and expectations from them. Is that okay? All right, thank you. Then finally, you're talking about funding. You cannot start building a house if you don't have the resources to build a house. No way. You can't enter a shop, a boutique, you want to buy a dress, you don't have the money to buy it. You can't begin to mention a project if the funding is not there. That is why, as a researcher, you need to be intentional about winning research grants if you want to turn your dreams into reality. Because on your own, you will not have the funding to do it. You can't go into if there is no funding, this project cannot stand. They can't do it. As I earlier mentioned, I'm doing a policy project. If the very first moment I went to the Ministry of Agriculture at Abuja to meet them, the first thing they asked, how much funding do you have? Because for us to get all those people you're talking about, we need logistics. So you can't be talking of doing a project without the funding. The funding, the resources must be there if you want to succeed. Thank you.
Another big round of applause for her. Thank you very much, ma, for that very thought-provoking lecture. We deeply appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Let's quickly go to the next item. I'm talking about the next lecture. And the next speaker is the Director of Academic Planning, University of Port Harcourt. She'll be speaking on advocacy and collaboration for gender equality. Professor Eucharia Wanchi. So please put your hands together as we hand over the microphone to her. As she's talking, you can jot down your questions so that I won't forget. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, the PRO of the university. And thank you, the principal investigator, the team lead, the project manager, for finding me worthy of talking to this very great audience. I think it's a very fascinating topic that you're dealing with. So today we'll be dealing with advocacy and collaboration. While he's trying to set me up, so the organizers, I don't think it's a good idea to cover this, because 100% of the people are looking this way. So I know this is important for a photograph. We should have removed after the photograph so that they can maximize ergonomics, straining their necks this way to look here. I see many of them are not doing that. So we'll lose a lot of attention to details in subsequent presentations. Let me get the other one. Okay, thank you, the IT team, for setting me up. So, as you were informed, we are discussing advocacy and collaboration for gender equality. And my name is Eucharia Oluchinwechi. We'll look at introducing the concept and understanding together gender equality advocacy, collaboration. How is it the power of partnerships? Look at some tools and tactics for effective advocacy. Examine some real-life examples to demonstrate advocacy and collaboration, and see what SDG 5 and 17 has for us, and make important conclusion. So by way of introduction, like the last speaker did, I'm an environmental biochemist and a science diplomat. That means I'm using my science to make engagement to changing things, and not just within the country, but globally. It's a passion I have for sustainable development and inclusive policy, which we are interested in today. So my work spans research, advocacy, and capacity building, having a strong focus on gender equality and community engagement. So that's why I showed that picture that appeals so much to my heart. You can see the last speaker on that picture. Evidence leaders. Okay, I'll see you later. Evidence leaders are a very great example of what we want to do: advocacy and collaboration, inclusivity. We have all of that. That's a government agency. We can see Federal Ministry of Science and Tech, the Director for Science and Environment there wearing the shield. This was during the COVID-19, immediately after COVID-19. So you can see visible marks worn by diverse people and evidence leaders we trained at the University of Port Harcourt. So you can recognize some faces there, and then that should help you to connect to what we are talking about. Why does this topic matter? This advocacy and collaboration. Why does it matter in this subject of inclusivity and policy dimension? It's because we have persistent gaps. Despite all the efforts that have been made by individuals, by institutions, by government, by even non-actors, the gap has continued to be there. In gender, a lot of us are worried about why gender goes beyond male and female. But then, some persons are also worried that we will focus on females and then the males will get extremed. And then we start looking for how to protect the other gender. Yeah, the gender, male and female, is more prominent when we're trying to consider gender issues. But we're not particular about sex. So the persistent gap we find in gender, even consciously and unconsciously, that comes in when we look at the policy blind spots, when the gender lenses are not being worn by those who make policies. So we unconsciously find missed opportunities. Maybe when we're making seats and the seats are designed in some way, only those who wear a pair of pants can sit there. Maybe if you look from here and you're wearing skirt, we can see between your legs. So we're not wearing gender lenses to design those seats. So that's why we're saying blind spots of gender. So we should consider to wear our gender lenses when we are designing even structural designs in every field. We have to talk about gender. When I told them about being scientists, when I was in Poland doing my evangelism to get the young people in Poland to love science as a fellow of UNESCO L'Oreal, that's one of the tasks I was given. So I talked to them about ugly eye shield. The eyeglasses, the goggles that we wear as safety wears, PPEs. So most of them are very ugly. So ladies would not like to wear them. So those are part of the gender blind spots that people have, engineers who make these designs. So people cannot see. Women like to be fashionable. Women like to be adored. We like to be stylish. Yeah, so when you're making anything that will be used by both genders, we have to consider wear lenses. Lab coat, we've started designing lab coats that will not just be free. Most of the lab coat, you wear it, immediately after the experiment, you just take it out to go out because you look terrible in that lab coat. So, but now we want to design lab coat that will be shapely, you know, the Coca-Cola bottle, yeah? So you wear it and you look very good as a woman. So you'd be very proud to be a scientist, an engineer, a STEM woman. So we want to make sure that the lenses are worn all of the time. Global commitment, look at the SDGs. Every country wants to see that the commitment they made, they are living up to it. So for us to align with the global commitments, we also would like to see this topic very important. Look at evidence. Evidence matters. In policy making, Dr. Fayobi has talked about the policy making, the rudiments, the rubrics on which they are made. You can see that we want to build bodies of evidence to show why they are important. Like I'm highlighting some of them, they gather evidences, bodies of data. And we like to use disaggregated data in the space of policy. What does that mean? It means the data is, they got this. Those who earn below this, they got this. Those who are artisans, they got this. Professional got this. So this is an example of disaggregated data. So it begins